All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG podcast, and today we have a bunch of different topics we're going to talk about. It seems like we can never get through a week without some new thing happening with Final Fantasy, but we have some other stuff to offset it.
The salt will never end.
Yeah. But before we get into that, I do apologize. We had a busy weekend this weekend, so it is going to be audio only. But next week, we will be back to our full and usual show. So anyways, we're going to talk about the recent Chrono Trigger release on Steam. A lot of people were really excited about it for about 10 minutes until somebody actually bought it. And now it has mostly negative reviews. The Chrono Trigger team that they mentioned, or Square-Enix, actually responded on the Steam page. So we're going to talk about that. Also, Valkyrie profile, Lenneth. There's a new trailer. It looks like it's going to be the PSP version, right? Well, I don't know. We're going to talk about that. And then also some more news with Final Fantasy 15. It looks like there's going to be multiple endings that Tabata was talking about, or possibility of. And then also, we have our poll results. So what game are we going to be discussing in detail later in the month? And then finally, what's the final topic, Eric? I feel like I'm forgetting something.
The final topic, does it have something to do with Chrono Trigger by chance?
That was the first thing I said.
Oh.
Okay. Well, if there's another topic I forgot here, I'll fix this in post. But let's go ahead and jump into that. First things first. If you're listening to this, the audio-only version on YouTube, you might as well go subscribe to the audio version, because it's going to be the same experience as what you're getting right now. So just go to iTunes or whatever pocket catcher you have on your phone. A lot of phones have a default feature in there, and you can download a podcast app and just type our show name in, Phoenix Edge RPG Podcast, and you can listen to the audio-only version, maybe while you're going to work or whatever the case may be. And vice versa, if you would like to see our usual visual aid to this podcast episode, or other podcast episodes, I should say, just go to YouTube, type in Phoenix Edge RPG Podcast, and you'll be able to see all our episodes on there. And you'll be able to see my face, Eric's face, and most episodes except this one. So just check us out there as well. We really appreciate it. But before getting into anything, I've been playing a game this week that I can talk about for a little bit. Eric, is there anything you want to bring up before I jump into that?
I've kind of been doing the same old I've already talked about on the show. I'm still going through more of Radiant Historia. I've been playing through Opera Omnia more. They released Chapter 6, so I've been going through that. What else? I've
been seeing a lot of hype around Opera Omnia. I've been seeing a lot of love around it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like I said last time, like they really limit on what you do in the gacha system in it, where it's mostly just for like weapon and armor upgrade. But really, the game is set up. It's not so difficult that you can't take on like whatever level and gear you have, as long as you have a full understanding of your characters. But I'd say this is definitely one of the better Square-Enix gacha games.
Very cool. Yeah, you know what? I have yet to try it, but I keep seeing all these people talking about it. You were talking about it. I see lots of people on YouTube talking about it. A lot of people online talking about it, so I might as well give in. So I'll have to try that this week. But very cool. This week, I've been kind of jumping around between playing more of the Zodiac Age, Final Fantasy V, and then I've also been playing a game I used to play a lot of back in the day on the PlayStation 2. It's this game called Shadow Hearts. The first game had a very limited release on the PS2, but it sparked a spinoff that was very well received. And then I had another one after that, but I'm playing the first game again, and I always really liked that game when it came out. I got it right after I got Final Fantasy X. I beat that game, and I just wanted another RPG. And it's got this very Japanese vibe. It takes place in Japan. But there's all this like crazy stuff going on. But I think the main reason I like it is I just really like the battle system. It's turn-based, but it goes on a judgment-based system where time's always a factor, because there's all these... I feel like I'm being incoherent here. It's a judgment-based system where there's all these rules that get played into the battle, and they're like handicaps that you have to try to contend with, but there's also a time factor with your sanity points, which are, it's basically kind of like your HP, another stat where every round your SP goes down. And if your SP hits 0, you lose your mind and like you go berserk. And so you're always trying to avoid that because your character will just randomly use items. And there's all sorts of crazy things that the battle system does that just keeps it interesting. And the general aesthetic to it is very, very mature. I mean, there's a lot of like demons and stuff like that and a lot of blood, but I don't know. I really liked it when it came out, and I thought it was just going to be more nostalgia for me when I played it again, but I've been playing it this past week, and I really enjoy it. I know a third of the soundtrack is the guy from Chrono Trigger. He actually composed a third of it anyways, so you can definitely tell when his tracks come in because all of a sudden the soundtrack's just godly. And then it goes back to like standard RPG soundtrack, but I've been really, really enjoying it. Did you ever check that one out?
Yeah, I owned a trilogy for it, and they were pretty good. I haven't played them since back when the PS2 was the go-to console of the era.
Sure.
So I may have to replay through it again, like almost 20 years later. But
right.
I remember enjoying it when I was younger, so maybe I'll still enjoy it as an adult, but that may be something I get to one day, or if it's popular enough in demand, maybe they'll make an HD release of it one day, but, either way, I've been tending to go back to my library as of late, so maybe that'll catch my eye one day.
Yeah, your mini game rental factory that you have in your house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good, man. So if anybody out there has not checked it out, I recommend seeking it out the best way you can. I know if you go on eBay, to get the original game, it's like usually like $50 or $60 because I think it had a limited release in the US. But so you might have to download it however you see fit, whichever way you want to go. But I definitely recommend it. If you look up the reviews on it, it is kind of hit or miss depending on who played it. IGN gave the first game a 5.5, but then like Game Informer and GameSpot gave it an 8.5. And it's just like, it's so conflicting. So it's weird. It's kind of like going back in time because if you read IGN's review, it says things like, with a story this good, the graphics should be better and stuff like that. And it's just like, well, they were so hyped up on graphics then. So I don't know.
No, people are still hyped up on graphics today. Just
yeah. Well, I think they've learned to appreciate more, because I like when I play it, I'm not like these graphics suck. It definitely looks like a really, really good looking PlayStation 1 game. So I can kind of see what they're saying, but a 5.5 for graphics, come on. So I don't know. But other than that, that's all I've been playing this week. I didn't make any more progress I did make a little bit more progress in Final Fantasy V, but we'll see how that goes. So let's go ahead and announce the poll results here, because that's going to be really dictating what I'm going to be playing this next couple of weeks. And last I checked, I'm going to check right now just to be sure. Yep. So officially, right now, we have 45% of the vote from last week's poll that said, which game should we have a full discussion about? The options were Final Fantasy VII, Xenoblade Chronicles, Radiant Historia, Terranigma, and Secret of Mana, the Super Nintendo version. And 45% of voters said Xenoblade Chronicles. So that was the game picked. So that is the next one we'll do the discussion on.
I'm honestly surprised with how big FF7 is and how everyone loves that. I was actually thinking, that's going to be a given. Like, why don't we put these other choices in? FF7's going to be a thing. But no, you all proved me wrong. Xenoblade it is. I'm happy to talk about that one too.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of funny because I was kind of monitoring it throughout the week, just kind of seeing what was going on. And Final Fantasy VII did get 36%. And Terranigma got 18%, with the other two games, Radiant Historia and Secret of Mana, getting 0. But I was messaging Eric and I was just saying, hey, it looks like we're going to be doing Final Fantasy VII because for like the first 3 or 4 days, Final Fantasy VII had a very strong lead. And then I saw like one vote come in for Xenoblade Chronicles, and I was like, well, there's somebody out there. And then I checked it again like 4 days or 3 days later, and it was like Xenoblade Chronicles at like 60%. And I was like, whoa, where'd that come from? But I'm excited to play through that game. I've only gone through like portions of the beginning, maybe like the first 5 or 6 hours. So I've been needing an excuse to push back through it. I know it's a long game, so that doesn't bother me though, because I know this is a really good game. I've enjoyed it so far, so I'm gonna blast through it.
It's an incredible game. It's definitely something you need in your life. I mean, it's not a perfect game. You know, like the side quests aren't that great or anything, but like the main campaign and the sense of adventure and the classic RPG elements you liked back then brought into like a more modern feeling, like for its time on the Wii. Like Xenoblade definitely delivers on that, and it just has a charming cast of characters and everything. I mean, you're going to enjoy it all the way through. I guarantee it.
Yeah, I'm already really enjoying the production value of it. I mean, it's just, I can tell it's a really well-crafted tale. It's really well done. The character development's really good thus far. The accents, I really like the accents because I'm used to American accents on my games, and just having that, something different is, it's enjoyable to me. So I'm liking it, but I'll play through it the next couple of weeks and then we'll have a discussion about it. And I think it's going to be pretty fun. So I'm looking forward to it. Next topic though, we have the Chrono Trigger release on Steam. I almost bought this game. I saw a bunch of news articles that popped up all over the place that said surprise release, Chrono Trigger is on Steam. And it was only like $15. And I just thought to myself, oh, I must go buy that. It's Chrono Trigger.
I technically already own it.
Oh, you already bought it on Steam?
No, I didn't buy it on Steam. Because what the Steam version is the port, is essentially a port of the mobile version. Mm-hmm. And Chrono Trigger on mobile has been out for a couple years now, and I bought it then to see what it's like, and it was kind of hard to work with. Like the touch controls were not that intuitive.
Right.
And so what they did for people who already purchased Chrono Trigger on mobile is they offered a free upgrade to that version. And I can play it on my iPad instead of my iPhone. So I technically have the Steam version. I don't have it actually on the PC, but it's the same exact game on the iOS, except it's touch controls.
Right.
Of the same interface as the PC version. So
yeah,
the only difference is I'm not using a controller.
You know what? This release on Steam has been eye-opening because I clicked on all the articles and I almost bought it on the spot because I think I got it I was looking at an hour after it posted, and I was watching the video because they have a little trailer for it, and I noticed they messed with it a little bit, and I was noticing this weird filter on the graphics and stuff that I did not like, and I was thinking, of course they did this to this game. But what was very, very, very misleading is they edited the footage for the trailer to emphasize that all the menus or the user interface from the mobile version, they have all these screens where you can't see the user interface. So people originally thought it was a Super Nintendo port or something. And so they hide the fact that it is just a direct port from the mobile. But
yeah, they were advertising that it was this all new enhanced version of Chrono Trigger, the way you've never played it before. And they're not wrong. We've never played Chrono Trigger like this before. Go ahead and explain why, what's wrong with it.
All right. Well, I mean, first off, if you go to the Steam page and you click on, you search for Chrono Trigger, you're going to see that right now, their review counter, it says in dark red, mostly negative, 338 negatives, right? And if you're going through the actual reviews, the main criticism here is that they just took the user interface, or basically they just ported the exact version from the mobile version and they put it on the PC. And it literally looks like, from the reviews that we've seen, and especially even from other review sites where it looks like it actually, like they didn't do any edits at all. Like it's literally like you can see where the player could touch the screen and like, like open menus and such, but they just left it there. And now they just have it to where like you can use your keyboard. Like it's a very, very lazy port. The graphics are very, I don't know. I mean, art is really your thing. Do you have comments on the art style that you want to bring up? I mean, I don't really like it. I don't think it's very authentic to the original. Like they put some weird filter on it, but go ahead.
Yeah, so what essentially they did is they used a tool, they used a smoothing tool because Chrono Trigger is a game with pixelated characters. And this isn't something the first time that Square-Enix has done. They've done this famously in their other ports that had pixelated characters, is that they take the character, like, granted they didn't completely alter the characters like Final Fantasy 5 and 6, but they took the characters and they use a smoothing effect. So the characters look all blurry, stretched out in this high resolution game technically.
Yeah.
So it just looks really blurry. It looks pretty awful. And like if you did like a side by side comparison, you would see clearly like what they did, and it just looks absolutely just dreadful to look at.
Well, it makes it seem like there's like this cloud over the game, and it's weird because they're trying to smooth it out to make it look cleaner, but it just feels like there's some, besides everything looking like really slick, like it looks like there's like this tint of just nastiness over the entire game screen, and it's just
On top of that, they made a user interface that looks like something that was made in Visual Basic in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm no expert programmer by any means, but even I know enough Visual Basic to make an interface like that. That is a very bare bones. And I can kind of understand why it looks a little bigger because it's originally built for touchscreen, this revised user interface. But they couldn't take the time to stylize it at all to make it feel like part of the game instead of like a separate part of the game.
Right. And it looks like literally like it looks like it's there for you to touch. Like that's what people said. Like it's literally like when you hear port, they're like, oh, well, they made some kind of modifications here and there. Like, no, it's like literally the same thing.
Yeah, this has been almost everything that Square-Enix has made so far put on the PC. Like Final Fantasy 3, 4, 5, 6 were all from the mobile version.
Right.
And while granted, like 3 and 4 can work like that, and technically 5 and 6 also, when you just look at how the user interface is created, you can just tell clear as day it came from the mobile version. They put like no thought process into it, porting it over. I mean, granted, I'm sure it requires effort to port the games over, but man, it's like, I feel like they're giving them like a budget of $5 and they're like, here, port something.
Yeah.
And
don't go over budget. Yeah. Well, the people that ported it actually left a response on Steam. They
did. Yes, they did.
Yeah, they said here. I'm just gonna, I have it up right now. I'm just gonna read it. It says the title is regarding Chrono Trigger. It says, "Hi everyone, thank you for the feedback you've shared so far regarding Chrono Trigger. We wanted to let you know that we are reading and listening to your messages and are aware of all the issues that you've raised, which we are currently assessing. Please keep an eye on the Steam page for further information. Thanks for your patience and support, the Chrono Trigger team." So
you see, the problem I have with that is it's so vague, and they're not even really going over what's wrong with it. But what were you going to say about it?
Well, yeah, it just seems like it just makes me feel every time I see stuff like this that Square is just out of touch. And I realize that there's different teams working on different games and different people are better than others, or more in touch than others. But when I see this and there's this much hate for this release, and they're just like, oh, well, like, thank you for all your messages. We're addressing this. It's like this. How did you not see this coming? Because like it's been a long running joke that like that Final Fantasy VI version that like where they redid the graphics and it looks like Microsoft Paint. Everyone was pissed about that. And then like a lot of people are pissed about what they did with Final Fantasy V. I mean, and just in general, people have not liked these mobile versions of these games. And the fact that they would just like port it over to the PC and not change anything and then be surprised when people are upset about it. And they're charging $15 too. Like it's not, they didn't do any work to it. It's the same game, but it's $15. Like that's outrageous. It just makes me feel like they're so out of touch. And, like, it's like, why would I pay for this money or pay for this game? And I know it's bad when I can just go get one of the greatest games of all time and just emulate it for free,
Yeah, the interesting thing is someone brought up today, and I saw it, was that they compared this to Wonder Boy, a remake of a game that came out on the Sega systems way back, like in the early 90s.
Right.
And what they did was they remade it, and they just made it visually beautiful looking. And it was just so gorgeous to look at. And I looked it up, and it was done like on a really low budget, just by a dedicated team of people who had passion for the game. And on top of that, they added a really cool feature, and by the press of a button, that you could switch between the two, and it would switch back to the original graphics of the game and the HD remaster graphics of the game, and it would switch between the soundtracks also if you wanted to by the click of a button. And I remember Halo Master Chief Collection did this with Halo 1 and 2, where you could just switch the graphics with the press of a button. Mm-hmm. Why aren't cool ideas like this coming in? And like, I would be so much more forgiving of the Final Fantasy VI HD remaster port for iOS and Steam if they had they just let you hit a button and it would switch, or at least a setting in the menu where you can go and you can switch between the original assets and the new assets.
Right.
Because as you can see, that lower budget teams, with granted probably the same amount of time, if I had to guess, were able to pull something like this off. Why isn't Square-Enix's team doing this? Why can't they put like original mode or like a CRT mode to make it feel like the authentic game as much as possible? It's like this is arguably one of their biggest RPGs they ever made. Everyone highly regards as one of the best. And then they do like a poor job like this. And they can't even remotely go the extra mile for it. It's kind of sickening, to be honest. Not to be
salty.
Well,
I don't know why did they not have a focus group? I don't know, because this to me just seems like a very common trend for Square. I mean, okay, they're big games, they're big titles. Usually, for the most part, it won't be like absolutely just horrible, right? But I mean, like, it seems like for a lot of their side stuff, they're just really, really lazy with it. I mean, even like the 15 DLC, like every time I play any of those DLCs, like it just feels like, okay, this was quickly made. Like it didn't feel like like it was fitting with the original game within that up to quality. I mean, or any of these ports with these other Final Fantasy games, or the Tokyo RPG Factory, which Square owns them. I mean, you go to play those games and like it doesn't feel like it's like top notch anymore. Like I don't. It seems like they're more concerned with just keeping things cheap and hoping that they're gonna have a big success off of it. And so like that's why it just irks me when they're like, oh, we had no idea. Thanks for letting us know. It's like, dude, we've been like, fans have been talking about this for like years, So I don't know.
Yeah, I tell you, Square really has an on and off switch. Like they turn on the switch and they make something great, like the Final Fantasy IV HD collection on PSP, which is arguably the most ideal and most gorgeous way to play the original Final Fantasy IV game in a pixelated style, not the 3D remake. The 3D remake's great also, but like if you just want to play like it in its sprite form, like the PSP version is so ideal. They recreated the sprites from like the ground up, I can just easily tell. And they made them like more up to date, like with their original character designs and everything. And it's just a beautiful looking game. So I'm baffled on why they decide to put like minimal resources on games afterwards, especially since the title was such a success. So you would think naturally that you put this on mobile, but I kind of feel like they're like, they can just put anything on mobile and we'll just,
well, I think you've brought up the perfect point, though. I mean, if you go to Google right now and you Google top 10 RPGs, link after link after link, Chrono Trigger will be mentioned in there, if not the number one spot. So, like, why would you not take some pride in releasing a version of your game that people actually like? Because you don't want people to pay money, Square, for your game and then feel like they got screwed, So
yeah, and I've never been in favor for a full remake of Chrono Trigger because I've always been under the belief that you remake something if there's something you can genuinely improve to the game. And Chrono Trigger is just one of those games I don't feel like you can make much better than it already is, except like some very minor things about it. So, but I've always been okay with the idea of a HD remaster of it. Like, just like redo.
Give it the Final Fantasy
sprites.
Yeah, give it the Final Fantasy VII treatment, like when they plopped that baby on the PS4. I mean, that was just perfect. Like, it was the original game, HD remaster, perfect. That's it.
I think, yeah, or just the Final Fantasy IV treatment.
Sure.
It's simple as that. And I kind of wish they did the same with 5 and 6, but I mean, I'll give 5 a pass a little bit just because what the original sprites came from. But 6 had like the most beautiful pixel art I've ever seen, arguably in a game of its era.
Yeah.
And just to see it just turn into MS Paint mode was just kind of hard to see. Granted, I bought the game, so I played through it to see everything, but like the art assets were just like really hard to look at as someone who's a major fan of that game.
Yeah. So Square, whoever is approving these art ideas, they need to go work somewhere else in your company. I'm not saying you fire anybody, but maybe.
But I think the message they give, I think the Steam reviews finally gave them the message of you can't just release something like this anymore. And that's obviously true with the message they just sent out recently. So I do at least hope that ports that they make in the future, they take a little more time to getting it right and making sure that it meets the quality standards that people expect from them. Because they haven't ported Final Fantasy Tactics to PC yet, which I heard rumors is going to be a thing eventually.
Oh my God, I'm already imagining what they're going to do with that.
So we can only hope they took Chrono Trigger as a message and fix that and make sure Final Fantasy Tactics, the iOS version, if that's what they decide to bring over, is done right for the PC.
They'll probably like outsource the port to like Tokyo RPG Factory and be like, can you just remake this in your style? They'll love it.
No, I don't think Square-Enix is
No, I don't think they'll do that.
But
Yeah, I'm just being really pessimistic here. But anyways, so it'll be interesting to see what happens here. They said they're going to, or at least they implied they're going to try to make it right because they told us to keep coming back to the Steam page for updates. So I don't know.
Unusually quick response from them.
Yeah, so we'll
at least they're owning up to it.
Yeah, at least they're not. Yeah, at least they're not giving it to Tabata. Like, no, it's perfect. It's great. At least they're owning up to its problem. So that's something positive to say. But moving on from here, we have the Final Fantasy 15 30th anniversary ceremony, ending ceremony. Tabata, the director of Final Fantasy 15, he made an appearance. And he made some announcements about the game, asking fans if they'd like to have the option of having a good and bad ending. And that's kind of sparked some people off. Some people are excited about that. Some people are irritated about that. But to add onto the fire, Square has also been showing off all these like tie-ins with The Sims and Half-Life, where you can like travel around Final Fantasy 15, like the world, play the game as characters from those games. And it's just making people feel just like, I guess, like just upset with the Final Fantasy 15 game at this point. But Eric, did you have any thoughts on that, or?
Well, it's pretty nice that they're letting us make the game for them.
Yeah.
They really don't know what they want to do with their game that already got released. I would just at least say, like, own up to what you did and just let it be. I mean, granted, one of the things that are actually okay with 15 is that I actually did enjoy the ending, and spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it, and I thought it was a good ending that Noctis ends the Lucius Calum line and let the people live their lives and not let stuff like Arden interfere anymore and let the daylight come back and end the whole primal cycle and everything. I thought that the way it ended was really good. I just thought the way it was executed to that ending was really off-putting and not well done at all. And I was okay with like his version of heaven, which was like him on the throne with Luna to his side and everything like that. And I thought that was nice. And like they kind of left you up to your own interpretation of what the ending could, what you want the ending to be like. Like, did the remaining 3 characters die? And they had you question a lot of things at the end when they have that campfire scene together. But like, that was kind of cool that you could come to your own interpretation of it, similar to like some kind of elements from FF9 and FF10 and their endings. And like, not every ending has to end like with a party and everyone cheering and hugging each other and saying, "Great work, gang," or anything like that. You can have a sad but satisfying ending to a game. And he doesn't have to make a super awesome ending where everyone's okay and everyone has a party and a good time and Noctis is king again. It's like, you don't need it. Just like, better explain the relationship between Regis and Noctis, because that scene doesn't hit you at all, because he's like, "Dad, please just do it." And Regis, is hesitating. It's like, well, we never got screen time with these two. Why do I care that like these two relationship at all? It's kind of baffling, just the execution, but I like the idea of the ending.
Right. I mean, look, I like the spirit that this is coming from, where it's like, hey, let's ask the fans, let's try to make this more appealing to the people that didn't enjoy it, or maybe the people that enjoyed it but would like to see the other side of the fence. I think there's something to be said about that I really respect. However,
but if you made, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you made a good product to begin with, that people you would not have to result to the fans to make it for you. Just saying.
Yeah, I mean, you know what game has never been questioned, like the ending, like, oh, let's go remake that. I don't know, like every Final Fantasy ever besides this one. I guess
14 they have to go back and do, but they actually removed the people who made the original 14 and put new people in. So,
well, and I guess 13 did reboot kind of the ending of 13, or 13.2 did anyways, but I
consider it more a retcon, but
yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But I mean, before that, we didn't really have this thing where they had to go back and like try to like fix it for the fans. So, I mean, I think the spirit is in the right place, where it's like, hey, we want to try to, we know we're not doing the best we can. We want to like make this satisfying for you all. But I mean, I don't know. I just feel like there's different problems at play here, and it's really hard for you to come and try to fix something after it's already been done. So, I mean, I guess it doesn't hurt, right? If you want to just make an update where you could have a different ending for the game. I mean, it's not going to hurt anybody's experience, because if they don't want that, they don't have to play it. The only thing I can think of that would actually kind of irk me a little bit is that there's parts of the game that I've mentioned in other episodes that I feel like it needs more work and needs more polish. They need some more scenes, and that resources are being put into the ending of the game, which is something that I didn't really have a problem with. And I know you said you didn't either. And I know most people didn't really like, that's one of the things they like about the game. So the fact that they're like, oh, let's have another ending instead of, like we said last episode, fleshing out Iris and Talcott and Jared, or fleshing out the relationship with his father, Noctis and his father. And there's so many other things that we spent hours and hours talking about everything that we thought they could have done better. So that's the only thing that gets to me, is that like the one thing that they actually, well, I don't want to say the one thing. There was a couple of things that I liked about 15, but that was one of the big things that I did like about the game. Was I thought that it was a very, very bumpy ride. A few times during the trip, I pulled over and was sick to my stomach, but we got to our destination and we landed on 2 feet somehow, and I liked the ending. So I do find it baffling that that's the place where they're like, oh, let's change that. But I don't know if that has anything to do with the fact that we have all these different pieces of DLC, like the episode Ignis, where you can take different routes. And then I'm sure some of the new DLC that's going to come out in 2018 and 2019 might have the possibility of shaping the ending as well. I don't know. So maybe that's where they're going with this. But I do think of all the things of 15, it's one of the things I'm the least angry about. I don't know.
I'll tell you how I change the ending. I wouldn't change the ending itself.
Mm-hmm.
I would change the final boss.
Yeah, I know you didn't like the way that went down.
No, and I've said this in the previous episode, so anyone who's seen the previous know what I think what they should have done, but this is their opportunity that they can make an actual final boss, because they have the whole lore of Arden just absorbed all these demons, and the primals decided that, like, okay, he is a ticking time bomb. We need to get rid of him. And they could have used that. So after Noctis has his solo fight with him, which is fine, the solo fight's A-okay.
Right.
What they should have done afterwards is, like, Arden starts going out of control. He can't keep his mind together. And all the demons that he ever absorbed in his life just manifest into this classic Final Fantasy final boss form. And then when you're done, like, fighting him and he turns into that, your 3 fellow characters come in, and the theming of brotherhood, like, hits really hard right here. And then they all work together to take down that final boss together. And that just nails that last theming of brotherhood there. And that's the whole point of the game, is the relationship between these 4 characters. And they couldn't even do that for the final boss. It's like, this is your perfect opportunity to do that. It's like, well, if you're going to change it, then do that.
Well, and here's the thing. I know that from what we've seen, they've changed the ending part of the game with the Royal Edition, right? Because if you watch...
Yeah, they added more to it from what I saw.
Yeah, so I don't know to what extent. I doubt they, like, redid the final boss battle and everything, but they did change parts of that, which I guess if you get the Royal Edition, the whole last part of the game and Insomnia, that's going to last a little bit longer. There's going to be a bigger dungeon, and you're going to see a lot of different characters you saw through the game. We already expressed our opinions that we think if you're going to change the canon ending of the game, that you probably should not have people pay for it. But aside from that, there will be that there. But I agree, man. Like that boss battle wasn't quite the Final Fantasy final boss that we normally get. So I don't know if that's they're gonna address that there, but that could have been done better for sure.
I will make a promise to you all that when they finally make all the DLC and arrangements by 2020, likely, I will play through the entirety of 15 again, and I will tell you how the game is actually when it's not in its alpha or beta form.
Well, and what's crazy, think about this. Okay, so we had the first year's round of DLC. I'm not going to count Comrades, even though it's got its own story and everything. I'm just not going to count it because it's very subjective how long it takes you to beat that. So you got your 3 main episodes with the main cast. Let's say that takes about 3 hours each. So that's 9 hours. Then we're going to have episode Arden. Let's say it's 3 more hours. And then we're going to have 3 more DLCs after that. I imagine that by the time we're done with this thing, it'll take longer to go through all the DLCs than it would to go through the actual main game, which is crazy to me, you know? So I think it is definitely going to be a very, very different game by the time this is all said and done.
Yeah, when they make the final product, I kind of hope that they just integrate all the DLC into the story to make it all seamless, so it actually feels like a slightly better paced game.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's one thing that irritated me too, because when earlier in the year or last year, I tried to go through the whole game with all the DLC they had at that point, and I was trying to play the game through and then play the DLC where it should be in the story. And like they didn't integrate it at all. So you get to Gladio and he just walks off, and it like a prompt did not come up that said, do you want to launch episode Gladio? I had to exit out of the game and then go into the sub menu and click on play episode Gladio. Then I didn't play the game with my Gladio. They had some stock character Gladio that you had to play the game with. And like, I think by the time I got done with the episode, I got like a special item or something I could use in the game. But I mean, I agree. They need to integrate that DLC literally into the game. I think they've started to with some of them I've heard, but yeah, I would like the DLC to actually be inside the game. So
yeah, well, we may get that by 2020.
Yeah, we'll see. So, very cool. Did you have anything to say about the all the crossovers? There's been a lot of drama with that too. With like the people are very outraged about the Half-Life costume pack and the Sims 4 costume pack, and I assume there's other costume packs and the.
I mean, they've done crossover stuff with pretty much every AAA company. This feels no different to me. And it's like, I understand that you want some sponsorship for the game, but like, yeah, there's a difference with just being too blatant with it and just being subtle with it. I'm okay with like subtle advertising, like you see like a 7-Eleven billboard in the back or something like that, or just some special little thing. But you know, when you go a little too far for it, when you're using like a Coleman plate, a Coleman tent, a Coleman chair for the camping, it's like, oh, come on, man.
It's like cup noodle.
It's like, why don't you just stare at the camera and lift up the cup and be like Coleman cups?
Yeah, and then that's it. And then you have Cup Noodle, and you have an Assassin's Festival for Assassin's Creed, and like Half-Life. And then now, if you buy Final Fantasy 15, the Windows Edition coming out here on the 6th, if you buy it like between the 6th and the 12th from EA's website, you get all the Sims 4 stuff in your game. And I could see why people are upset about it. I mean, it is exactly what the creator of Final Fantasy, Hironobu Sakaguchi, I know I always butcher his name, but anyways, this is exactly what he was afraid of, and why he did not want sequels with his games is because he felt like when you make sequels, you cheapen the brand name. And I imagine like this type of stuff would be his worst nightmare for Final Fantasy. So I don't know.
It does. And in all seriousness, no, it does kind of break you out of the experience a little bit when it does things like this, when it puts stuff in the way like that, because you kind of just want to get like worked and immersed into the game, and then you see like something just blatantly like advertised to your face, and you're like, oh, come on, stop putting the pop-up ads on me. I paid $60 for this.
Yeah, well, that's I think because I don't know how much money they're making off all these like little side deals with all these different companies, but I wonder if we'll ever have a medieval mainline Final Fantasy game again. Because if they go medieval, like I'm trying to imagine what kind of product placement they would have to do, and it would have to be pretty creative for them to be able to, you know, use Cup Noodle in like Final Fantasy IX's world. But I don't know, they could probably figure something out. So
yeah, I had a thought in my head, but I mean, you just don't want to be taken out of experiences all, and just be more subtle about it. That's all.
Yeah. So
I'm kind of repeating myself, but you know, that's how it is.
Sure. This does bring us to our next topic. So recently it was announced that Katase, the man who directed Final Fantasy 6, 7, 8, and 10, and was a producer of 13. He is going to be a board member of Square-Enix, along with Hashimoto and Yoshida. I can't ever pronounce these people's first names, but
Naoki Yoshida.
Naoki Yoshida.
The Yoshi P.
Yeah, so these are big names in the Final Fantasy world. So the fact that we have some actual creators here that supposedly we would imagine have better intentions for the brand. They're actually going to be board members of Square-Enix now. So this is starting on April 1st. So I think that's exciting for me personally, because this makes me wonder if perhaps this is Square recognizing that they're going in a direction that is, or they have been going in a direction that has made a lot of fans unhappy. So maybe Katase and these other individuals, they can turn things around. What do you think?
I really don't know what to think yet. I know from playing Final Fantasy XIV a lot that Naoki Yoshida is a fantastic producer and director of the game. I know he's very passionate about the Final Fantasy series in general and MMOs, and he was able to blend both beautifully together with Final Fantasy XIV. And he is a very no-nonsense type of person. He pretty much came up and just like slammed on the table that like there's no way we can fix 14 1.0. We need to remake this game from the ground up. And like just pretty much threw an ultimatum at Square Enix. And, you know, they funded A Realm Reborn, and look at that. Final Fantasy 14 is one of their biggest cash-ins now.
Yeah,
that's successful.
Honestly, that's the biggest thing that impresses me about him is just the fact that that took a lot of balls to say, hey, we need to, not only do we need to reboot this, like we're just going to, like from the ground up, we're just going to remake this game, and it's going to be Final Fantasy 14 again, but it's just going to be a better game. And he not only did that, but he succeeded. And I think it's one of the most popular online games in that style, right? Out right now. And it's just a cash cow for Square, and it's a good game, So I think that having that kind of insight will be very beneficial to the company. Katase, as exciting as that is for me, I also recognize that I think he's kind of past his prime, and he is regularly quoted as saying moronic things like mobile gaming shows me the future for games because we can judge quickly what fans like and don't like, and little gems like that that make me question whether they
let Katase off the Sakaguchi leash.
Yeah, exactly. If anyone's curious what he means by that, every game that Katase directed where Sakaguchi was a producer, the game's amazing. So you get games like Final Fantasy 6, 7, 10. These games are just...
Didn't he do 8 also?
Well, I'm talking about games where Sakaguchi was like not... or that was heavily involved, right? So 6, 7, and 10, Katase was...
Oh, right. He was executive producer. Sakaguchi was.
Yes.
On 8. So, yeah, you're right.
So, anyway, 8, he didn't have as much presence, but that game's still pretty good, but it has some issues, I think. But and then 13, no Sakaguchi in the house at all. Just Katase producing that game, and so I don't know. Exactly. He's off the leash of Sakaguchi, I guess, but we'll have to see. I think it is positive mostly. I don't know what we can expect from this. Makes me wonder how involved is the job to be on the board? Does that mean that Katase is still going to have time to produce the Final Fantasy VII remake? I would assume so, right? Because I highly doubt.
Probably. I think they just have like boardroom meetings once in a while, and they just decide on major decisions. I don't know how these same people will react in a board director's room, because sometimes there's like a reality of the situation that is a little beyond their control, and they probably can't think of like a better way through it.
Sure.
And because of that, they may not be able to give the type of opinions that they may be known for in there. So, they may be able to do a real good job of it at board of directors, and maybe they won't be able to. Even as much as I like Yoshi P, like, I don't know his ability as a board of director. So it's just kind of something we'll have to see. And if they make any bad decisions, we're not going to necessarily know who made that call up there.
Yeah. I'm just going to blame it on
come
Tabata.
Out and say, "Oh, my bad."
Yeah. I don't know. So we'll have to see how this goes. Yeah, I'm pretty sure like it's not going to affect the 7 remake though, because If it was, I would have a hard time believing that Square Enix would be like, oh, let's take Katase off the 7 remake. Let's take Yoshida P off Final Fantasy 14. And then Hashimoto, he's like he's a big story writer, isn't he? Or no, he's been a producer. God, I'm delirious tonight. Let me look him up because I know he's produced a lot of the games.
I think he was involved in 13. What was his name again?
Shinji Hashimoto.
As a producer, he did a lot of the older Final Fantasies, like Final Fantasy 8, 9, the Kingdom Hearts games, the iOS versions of like 7 and 9. He was producer of 15. Executive producer, for a lot of ports and remakes.
See, so this guy is a mixed bag because he has a lot of good stuff on his resume. But I think the thing that really bothers me is Final Fantasy 15, him being a producer. A lot of people, including myself, regularly crap on Tabata and Nomura and everybody for the game taking so long. But this guy was the producer of Final Fantasy 15 for like 10 years. So the fact that game had so many problems.
Yeah, he's the head of Square Enix's Business Division 3.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure he'll give some good insights. So this is exciting.
Oh wait, he's also the co-creator of Kingdom Hearts.
Ooh, wow. So he's very important. So there we go.
And he's 60 years old too, so he's near retirement age.
Yeah, I'm looking at this guy's picture on Wikipedia, and usually those are a little dated. And even in this picture, he's looks like he's had younger days. But well, I don't know. We'll have to see what changes, if anything. I don't even know how many people are on the board of directors at Square Enix. Watch it be like a board of like 40 people, and it's like 3 names is actually going to change something. But, you never know. Maybe just having somebody there that's like, hey, I've been with this for a long time, and fans don't like this type of stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah, hopefully someone can drive some common sense in there.
Yeah.
Be like, look, the people clearly do not like this. People obviously have complaints about this. Like, we need to shift our priorities correctly, or we're just going to be going down a slope from here.
Yeah. So, cool. We'll have to look out for it and see what is going on with that. I'm definitely interested to see if anything changes. But moving on to our next and final topic, we have the new Valkyrie profile Lenneth trailer that came out recently. I watched it. I know you messaged me about it. Did you have some thoughts regarding it?
Well, it's called, what they mentioned it called specifically was Valkyrie Profile Lenneth. And what that is, it was the PSP version of the original PS1 title with enhancements and new additions to it. And I'm wondering with this trailer if they're just porting that game to another device now, or if something else going on we don't know. But Square-Enix tends to overhype their trailers for ports. So I honestly think it's either one of two things. It's either going to be something for the Switch, or they're going to make an iOS version, iOS/Android version of the game. I don't think it's going to be a new title, especially since they called it exactly what it was called in the PSP version. And it's a great game, and I'll be glad to play it if like the touch controls or everything are great, or if it looks great on the Switch, I'll be glad to play it on my Switch also.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's even possible that they're making a PC, PS4 version of it also. So I think it's like one of those 3 things, actually. That'll be like PC, PS4, like Secret of Mana, or Switch, or both together, like Switch, PC, and PS4, or it's going to be something on your touch devices. I think it's one of those 3.
Yeah, it's hard to tell from just watching the trailer, because I watched it and I was interested in what was shown, but I mean, all I saw, I didn't really see much, and I heard a lot of people screaming in Japanese. and it seemed like it was well voice acted or whatever what was on there. So that
I mean, the original game is fantastic. It's a real classic. It was definitely in the later end of the PS1 era,
yeah,
and it was made by Enix before they became Square-Enix.
Yeah.
And this is definitely one of their top tier games. It was just really good.
Yeah, for a while, that game was actually extremely expensive if you wanted to play it until last couple of years. Because I was looking at buying it a couple times and it was on eBay and it was like well over $100. So,
yeah, it's not cheap to find, but it's worth going through. It's cheaper to find it on the PSP. I don't believe they made a digital version of it. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but you can't find it in the PSN store.
Right.
At least not the Lenneth version.
And did you like the PSP version?
The PSP version's great. It is essentially a port of the PS1 version, but they did add a little more to it. I believe there's additional characters to get in the game. Because the whole thing is, it's based off Norse mythology, and you are Lenneth that is sent by Odin to retrieve souls of fallen great warriors to aid you in battle towards like the greater evil coming.
Sure.
And each character you're picking up has like their own individual story that you go through. And like each one is like really cool and interesting in its own right.
Very cool. Yeah, it's one of those games that I've been wanting to like really just dive into, especially since it's kind of like a cult classic. It's just, it was either like very, very expensive for me to find or just haven't had the time. So I don't know if they're doing another re-release, if it's anything good, I'll have to definitely dive in there and check it out.
Yeah, I'd say hold out a bit and see what they're up to.
Yeah, might as well at this point, right? So that wraps that up. We do have a few comments I guess we can just hit real quick because I did mention that we would bring those up in the comments from the last video. So nothing too time intensive here, but we have first off, Mike from Dark Pixel again. He commented on our highlight from last week, and he said that he agreed that he was also confused. He had no idea who Jared was, and that kind of tags on to Arzilla's comment that he says he absolutely agrees with Eric that Final Fantasy 15 is riddled with story plot holes, and to think that the 15 Royal Edition still won't be the full game is shocking. Absolute shambles.
Look, man, this is the reason we need episode Jared. I am all for it. We need to know what happened to Jared.
I'm telling you, man, almost all my problems can be solved with 15. Everything comes back to that point. It's like, okay, who's Jared? Oh, it's Iris's butler. Why don't I know that? Why don't I know about Iris and Gladio's dad? You know, there's so many issues that stem from this. If we just had some more information with Talcott, who's also related to Jared, the end of the game would be better when Talcott picks you up. So
I'll all my complaints of 15 I'll throw right away, and I'll call it the greatest Final Fantasy ever if they ever make an episode about that.
I'm gonna bring this up when like Tabata comes out next week and he's like episode Jared. But yeah, I'll definitely pay for that if that comes out. So
Tabata's listening right now. He's like, oh yeah, I'll show you.
He's like, well, we'll get some positive press. All right, so we had that, and then also Ocean Jams said, wait. He's referring to our last week's discussion on Kingdom Come Deliverance. I was talking about how I wanted to pick it up, but I was having some issues, and I felt like I should wait, probably. But I wanted to see what you all thought. And he said, wait a while to pick up Kingdom Come. The bugs have been breaking for him. And absolutely one of the worst save systems I've encountered. And I actually did some research on this some more. And this game, for the first 10 hours, it works pretty flawlessly. But after that, like the bugs in this game are just so atrociously bad that people like, the reviews are strange because you read them and they're just like, this is such a fun game to play. But the bugs are just terrible. And one of the ones that was brought up was this save system issue where in the game, the way you save, you have two options to save. You can either save at an inn, so you have to constantly travel to an inn to save, or if you want to save like while you're out in the open, adventuring or whatever, you have to buy these potions that are like alcohol. So I guess it's more like wine. And when you drink it, it lets you save. And then whenever you load back into your game, you're drunk. But if you don't have these potions, you can't save until you get to an end. And I guess the problem is there's some kind of bug where, like, even if you use the potion, you still can't save. And then when you get to the end, you can't save. And sometimes people haven't figured this out till they're like, they haven't saved in like 6 hours. So
that is some old school saving right there.
Yes.
No doubt.
So, it's got some...
It's still not as bad as having to pay $10 for an extra character.
Oh, and was that Metal Gear Survive?
Yeah. If I want to get on that Konami hating train for a second.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Apparently, I heard that and I was just like, wow. Wow. Okay.
But yeah, that does come more into say of what I said when we talked about Kingdom Come Deliverance, that these games, especially open world ones, can tend to be really buggy and there's a lot of problems beforehand that to do your research before you decide to buy the game. And I'm glad like a comment like that comes up because, that just further reinforces my statement of with these open world games, it's just make sure that it's at the state it should be before putting $60 down on it. I don't think Kingdom Come Deliverance is 60, or is it? I don't know, but
yeah, it's 60
even
bucks.
Then, oh, it's $60. Okay, well, yeah, it's like definitely do your research, and if it's not at the state where it should be, just wait till it is.
Yeah, 'cause if this is a brand new like studio, I mean they've been around for several years, but they've been working on this game. This is the first game that they're working for their studio, and even though like you have veterans on board. It seems weird to me that you would make an open world game your first game, especially if you want to make an RPG. I guess I would, if it was me, I would be
ambitious.
Yeah, more inclined to make like a more linear adventure and I don't know, gain some more experience. So I don't know, but it is what it is. So that wraps up this week's podcast episode and a lot of cool topics. And I'm sure there will be more and more exciting Final Fantasy news. It seems to get dropped every week. I think it's almost done on purpose for us to talk about.
Yeah, guys, we love talking about non-Square-Enix games also, but, unfortunately, Square-Enix is the loudest one, and that's the news that always comes by us first. So, I mean, if you have any suggestions or anything like that you want us to talk about that isn't related to Square-Enix titles, we'll be glad to talk about it. Just put your thoughts and comments below.
Yep, exactly. And one last time, we did have the poll results, and that was a Xenoblade Chronicles. So be looking for that. We're going to have a discussion on that pretty soon. I'm currently running through the game, and if you have any thoughts on that game that you want us to bring up, just leave that in the comments, and we'll be glad to bring that up. But thank you for listening. If you're still here at this point, just hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We really appreciate it, and we will catch you all next week. Thank you.
See you all.